Well, we're back, and we apologize for the technical difficulties, but we're set to go. We're going to start over where we were, and we'll be able to just chop it up just like that. Cynthia, your story? Or do we need to back up a little further? So we're just finishing up with Nicole DeMario's presentation, which was wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And then we were going to go into the story about when Cynthia and Nicole were together. Cynthia.
Yes. So this is, I'll just start all over again because first of all, Nicole is incredibly important to me. She's really one of those amazing people, and people noticed in the chat that we just abandoned when we switched over to this video stream. But people were picking up on the high vibe and the really great energy. People were noticing the green aura around Nicole's head and beings. So I'm just going to put that out there too. So, and I also did notice that. Yes, Nicole's energy is incredibly good, and it's very much in line with, as I was saying previously, with the love stream that Shane does on Friday nights. And so Nicole and I were sitting together in a restaurant called, what is it? The Dushanbe Tea House, right?
Correct, yes.
That's it, a beautiful restaurant. It's in Boulder, Colorado. And I think they reconstructed it and moved it beam by beam. Where did it come from again originally?
Oh, was it Uzbekistan? I'm not sure.
It's got an amazing history, but it looks so exotic, and the wood is carved and beautiful. The food is incredible, but this is not a food or restaurant review. What actually happened, the importance of this event had a lot more to do with the conversation that I had with Nicole. We were talking about just very much like what she just talked about in her presentation. So for those of you who are listening to that and enjoying the ideas, some of them that I really like are the idea of just relentlessly pursuing positives. Exactly. Well, I was talking with her about that same idea and how good can it get? And what if the whole world chooses to go that direction? How good could the whole world get? So as we're talking, unbeknownst to me, because I was a little oblivious, the restaurant was emptied of all the customers except for the two of us. And I noticed when the check came, and then I looked around and thought, oh my gosh, we're the only ones here. And I think about that time we asked the wait staff person, maybe should we leave? And we got strong reassurance. Oh, no, you should definitely stay. It was really emphatic. And the whole thing was quite unusual in a good way. And then the waiters were all gone. They went back to the kitchen, or I don't know where they went, but we had the entire huge, beautiful space to ourselves. So we're still talking some more. And then I suggested, I'd like to get a picture taken with you. I've got my camera and we can just snap like a selfie. So I stood up, and I just started to move a rose, and I'm just reaching over for something. This is a dried rose, but it is, I believe it's the exact same rose because I took a photograph of it and then it vanished. This is a long story here. But when it showed up, it was fresh. This is the first time in my life that I've had something so alive just show up. I've had other things show up, but nothing like fresh cut rose. So then we looked around. There were no roses like this in the restaurant. This was not something that was on the table. It was not like someone's, it didn't come from anywhere that I could see. I'd love it, since Nicole is here, maybe you could say a few words about this too, the conversation.
I had gotten up. I'm not sure if you remember, and I was moving my chair, and it was not there when I got up. And then when I got back, it was, and the whole space was empty. We were the only two, and as you say, the wait staff was not in that space. They had been in the kitchen all that time.
Which is like 50, 60 feet away. It's a big space.
It was amazing. And there you and I were, and we were looking to see if that flower had come from a different space, and none of the tables had them, or
Yeah, we looked up, we looked around. It was very funny. Because I thought, well, the obvious explanation would be maybe it was like a table setting or something I didn't notice, but it wasn't. And I didn't have the presence of mind to take a photo right then. So I took a photo of it later that evening, many hours later. It was a bit wilted, and then it completely vanished. And I traveled back to California from Boulder. and it was gone. I looked for it. I looked for where I'd put it. Where I put it was safe. What I thought was a very safe place in a very specific travel purse that I use. And I use it quite a lot. Every time I use it, I empty it completely. So I came home from the trip, emptied it completely, used it many, many more times. Then one day, this showed up in that same travel purse at the bottom where it would have been completely crushed if it had been there. Mm. And so this showed up on a day that I was talking with someone that you know, Shane, the quantum healer, Candace. You know? Is Shane there?
Yep, Candace Carl Goldman. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So this actually affects all three of us in a way. So I think I wanted to bring it just to talk about that. And also to talk about the fact that when you focus on these very high vibes and like the love stream that Shane does and like what we're feeling and like what you're talking about, Nicole, and really you've written a book too that helps people get to that state. So the book of Nicole. Yeah.
I wonder how I came up with that title.
So we can go ahead and ask some questions.
I love it. Okay, this one comes from Alva Yarder. Question: we watched Looney Tunes, spelled Toons. Now we listen to Looney Tunes, spelled Tunes? Question mark. Is this a form of mind control? Interesting question.
Is this for me or Cynthia? I was thinking this might be a better question for Cynthia.
Yeah, Nicole really doesn't get into mind control for, this is, I wrote down, it was like, this is Alva Yarder. Nicole is at a high vibe frequency where mind control is no longer an issue, which is an interesting concept in itself. And I think it's actually a good thing the question came in, because a lot of people are very focused on mind control. And we just talked about it in Lauren's presentation. So it does come up. Shane, do you want to add to that? Or
Yeah, I think, and this comes up a lot. And I think, it's a valid question. It's a valid concern, because nobody wants to be mind controlled, right? But I do agree with you that, I think your level of consciousness, like we were kind of talking about how much you are awake. And once you sort of reach that path of awaken, I think it's less likely of a concern at that point. It's sort of just when you're what they call the NPC, you're just kind of a sleepwalker. You're going about your daily thing. You're sort of taking the TV programming in and that's fine, just living the American dream or whatever, but you're kind of just sleepwalking, and I think that's when we're more easily influenced. That's why I believe that, this community seems to be more awakened, because it's these people that know about all the other things that are seeing the Mandela effect as well. So no, I don't think we're being mind controlled. If anything, like Lauren said, it might be the other way around.
May I add something?
Yeah,
yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I usually just approach situations like that as an impossibility for me. Like, for example, I was looking at a space and recently in the last week, and someone was telling me that it had a dark energy. And so I just simply said, show it to me, reveal the space to me, whatever that is. And I did have this experience of an energy and was able to identify that. But in that space, when I said reveal it, I always have an expectation of that I'm always protected and I always know the truth, and I take that with me throughout my day. So, and some people, whatever works for the person, whether someone shields or they just say, nope, that's just impossible for me. That's not how I relate with my world. So I don't think we have to have fear-based consciousness if we don't want to. That's a choice. I
agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And I think, but a lot of people might not experience it as a choice. So I'm going to put that out there too, because that's what's interesting about our community. Very interesting. This is an interesting day, actually, because we've been all over the place today, from people who are traumatized and feeling all sorts of things to this. Now we're super high vibing and
we're soaring now, baby. Okay, so let's see. We're going to go to Go-Kart Bob, and his question was, can you explain cat in the box? And I did clarify with him, are you talking about Schrodinger's cat? And he did say yes. Do you have any comments on that, Nicole?
I guess I would. Do I have comments about this? that's a thought experiment. So really thinking about the possibility of different realities. I guess to me, this seems like quantum superposition. We have infinite possibilities available in any given moment, and the moment of choice, and it doesn't even have to be a conscious choice, but it can be a vibrational choice also. Whatever that we are emoting, we are drawing to us. That's why I think it's so imperative to hang out feeling good as often as possible, because then we draw more of those types of experiences to us. But absolutely, I like to contextualize my life. And, it's that thought whether I can or I can't, and to really be mindful enough to catch where my thoughts are hanging out. I'm not sure that answers that question, but if someone else wants to jump in, please do so.
I think the question might have been because that you were described as loving to study quantum physics in your spare time. So then it might be like, what does the Schrodinger's cat mean to you? Like, how does that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different quantum theories and a lot of inner knowings about. Yeah, for me, it just kind of touches on superpositioning. And the moment, of course, that we observe something, we change it. So energy is always relational, whatever that is, whether like the universe doesn't know in order between a TV or a person or a plant. It's all one unified field of consciousness. So, yeah. And for me, I guess I don't necessarily have to, like I just say to the energy, I say, show me what's there. And then I know what's there. So, and another thing I say to myself is, what is the truth of this situation? Reveal itself to me. And then it does. So whether I hear it as a thought in my head, or it's a flash of vision, or like someone says something to me, and it's that deep knowing, like, what is the truth? Ultimately, I always want to know the fundamental truth of any situation.
I like what you said in your presentation too, that if you do notice a couple of thoughts come to mind, you'll go with the one that's obviously better. Maybe you just hinted at that. I got that idea listening to your talk.
Wonderful. Well, and I love that you have your own experience, because I just say what I say, and then people interpret them, and interpret whatever the way that it is resonant to them, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if you'll. I'll just ask the question from AJ, the Rip-On Rabbit Hole. Do you do slam poetry? Do you know what slam poetry is?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I haven't done it before, no.
Oh, okay.
But I do appreciate it. It's a wonderful medium for expression.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, I wasn't. For those who aren't aware of it, is there a quick explanation? Slam poetry. It sounds interesting.
It's
like automatic writing, but poetry or something?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay. So let's see. Melinda Inverson. Let's see. Question. Nicole, when did you notice you were becoming a higher vibe being? Did something happen to you to open your heart specifically?
Yeah, actually, it was a relationship, and that really drove experiences. And there's a saying that says, when you know what you don't want, you then know what you do want. And through any experience of mine, I really clarify, okay, what in that experience do I really like? And so that started me on a journey at Sedona, personal coaching, authentic relationship, all different types of things. And I got to pick and choose what in those was really resonant with me. And I was actually invited to participate in a year-long intuitive coaching program. And so we often connected twice a day, and we were doing visualizing and shielding and different things. And that really through those experiences, I really got to define my expression. Someone would tell me, well, this is how I handle that type of situation. And I would ask, is that true for me? And if it wasn't, then my follow-up question would be, well, what is it for me? I got to listen. And that's what I would encourage anyone to always check in with yourself and say, what is it for me? What is my path? What is my way? Because that's really where the magic is in our individual respective pathways, our paths.
Excellent. Okay. Next one is from Daisy Thomas. We lost, let's see. How to protect my gut when there's a sudden, unexpected outburst of anger near me.
Yeah, again, I would ask you to ask yourself, what is it for you? How would you like to protect yourself? I do different things. I ground, I meditate. Sometimes I envision myself in a bubble and it's impervious. I've envisioned myself encapsulated in like a glass chamber, and which is what I did a week ago when I said reveal that energy in that space. And I was just curious because I was told that someone had died in that space, and it was a girl, a young girl, and I just said, okay, I'm curious. Show me what that space is. And instantly I had been encased in this glass box. And I'm grateful that, I know to do that, because the energy was very dark, and it was on my box, like this glass box trying to get at me. And so I then got to play with, like, you don't get to be here. Like, I forbid you, I refuse you permission. So it was that kind of thing. But I would always say, check in and ask yourself what tool or what thing might work for you. Play with it. That's what I do.
Great advice. Anything to add to that, Cynthia?
Oh, wow. It's such a good answer. I think it's just like when you eat food, you need to make sure that your diet works for you, and it needs to fit your beliefs and so forth. Yeah, it's kind of funny though. So I was helping someone do a clearing in their apartment, and I just got an email this morning from that person because that person had died. Also, you're mentioning this, and I'm like, wow, that just happened. What a coincidence. So I just got feedback on the person who died, and we did some blessings for the space. It had gotten pretty bad. Long story short, when I had done that a couple weeks ago, I had felt the presence of that there was a tenant underneath, and so I said, this person's going to be affected by what we're doing. And I described it to the landlord person, and they said, okay. And I said, you just want to be mindful, because some people, we're radically shifting the energy. It's going from extremely dark, really bad, like really, really bad, to super, super good. And it's I don't know what's going to happen, but something's, they're going to notice. You just don't do something like that and they don't notice. So I got the email this morning from the landlord saying, yes, well, this person was blown away. They said that tenant downstairs, basically, he went from being completely locked in and depressed and despondent and just very dark to now going out on walks, cheerful. It said they're going to change their whole life. Came out of nowhere. And it was a great way to start the morning.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Yeah,
this stuff is real. And so what Nicole is talking about, you might think, well, that's real woo-woo. No, this stuff is very real. Like, it's as real as roses dropping out of the air. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen it, and I know how bizarre it sounds, but until it happens over and over again, you'd be almost crazy to deny it, right?
Right.
Okay, this comes from Millennium Wasted. Wasted Millennium, sorry. Question, how do you differentiate from a ghost, alien, or other energy? Is there really a difference, since it's just another frequency or energy most people cannot tune into yet, it seems?
I'm not sure that I have an answer to this, because I can't say, so if someone else wants to take this, I haven't had a real tangible experience of extraterrestrials. I had one in a dream, but that I would say that would be the only one. So if someone else wants to add, please do.
Yeah, just a lot of experience. It's just like anything else. It's like if you get good at identifying dogs, if you go to be with dogs a lot. So if you talk to a lot of ghosts and talk to a lot of ETs, then it's just a lot of asking each one, who are you? And really getting a lot of back and forth confirmation, validation, just years of experience. Then you can do it. I don't know how to say how to do it in just a sentence. It's not like that kind of thing. It's going to be experience.
Great question or great answer. So people would just ask, and is there fear of deception? Like I'm this, but I'm really that, or anything like that?
That's such a good clue. When you start getting deception, that tells you a lot right there. So
Right.
yeah, you get lots of information.
Okay, good. Okay, Eric Mill asks, if the observe always affect the results, is scientific experimentation real? How can we ever trust our results? Personally, I do still love science. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that I think, and for me, I think of it more from a perspective of a unified field. If there is no separation, we can perceive separation between energy, but if there fundamentally is no difference, then that means that our thoughts drive every experience. And that is absolutely, it's such a good question because it's one that I've thought about. I know, like my first 3 years in college, I was taking epidemiology and exercise phys, and I was reading medical journals, and so I get the double-blind study. But if we take that further on a quantum level and we look at it through the eyes or the perspective of a unified field, then there is no way to remove ourselves from that experiment. It's such a good question. I love that. Thank you. Yes.
Cynthia, I'll let you ask a question. I need to get a hold of Moneybags. Apparently, you put a question in here. I'll see it.
Oh, he did? Okay.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to riff off what you were saying. So I want to follow up on that question that Eric was asking and take it a little further. Have you given any thought, Nicole, to you're sort of like envisioning where science might go? Because some interesting things are happening with a lot of the assumptions we've made about science. Obviously, everything from assumptions of objectivity, that one's shot. All sorts of things are not quite the way our classical scientific method was set up to operate. Things are very different right now. So I don't know if you've given any thought to what that might look like, or can you imagine that?
Yeah, I like to say that quantum science is a body of science that evolves as we do. So does that make sense?
To me, it does, but it's kind of nebulous.
Yeah, and I think part of that is the questions that we ask, right? I think that when we ask better questions, we get better answers. And I think about Einstein and Bohr and all of these things. So often people weren't asking those questions.
That's right.
Like, is energy relational? And while we can have an experience of time and space, do they fundamentally exist? And can we have an experience, I know you'll love this, of linear time? Absolutely. But fundamentally, is that the way the universe operates, linearly? Now, we know that that's not true.
We know that's not true.
Yes. So, and that's why it gets so exciting for me, because it opens the door. And all of these experiences that people may or may not have thought were valid, I think there's a greater attentiveness to them at this point.
Yeah.
To say, so not to discredit the experiences they're having. So, but yes, absolutely, our beliefs drive our experiences. They can. So can our emotions. So.
Perfect. We got a question from Atsuko Uchida. What do you suggest to do to have balance between inner work and fighting out there in the physical world?
Yeah, I would say ask yourself what that is for you, for the individual, because there is no right answer. It's just what is the answer for that person. And they'll know and check in as often as you need to. Like, what does it look like for you in this moment? What does it look like for you this morning, for this afternoon, for this day, this week? And I like to believe that people know the best of all things for themselves. That's kind of how I approach that. For me, I notice if the outer work has, I pay attention to my energy, like what is my vibrational offering? And if I'm vibing low, I know it's time to do something else. Something that feels better to me or something that feels good. And like whatever that is it watching a feel-good film? Is it listening to a good piece of music? Is it picking up the phone and calling a funny, witty friend or someone that you love, Cynthia? Or like, what is that for you? And let that be your guide, your own inner wisdom.
Also, to add to that, just my little 2 cents, I find it's often better to put energy into what you want rather than fighting what you don't want.
Yes.
Then it's more going with the flow rather than trying to resist something,
So true.
What do you think, Cynthia? I know you got great advice.
I just love what you guys are saying. I'm just like nodding, like grinning, nodding.
Right.
Hopefully we haven't lost everyone else. But
Well, Moneybags has a Mandela effect related question.
Awesome.
In your opinion, why did the Mandela effect explode on the internet around late 2015?
Cynthia, would you like to take that one?
Or did he want to know Nicole's opinion, or I think
just
okay.
Nuance.
Well, 2015, I think that I think we hit a tipping point. My theory goes like this. I've been tracking the meditation, especially in the United States, and we hit around the 10% tipping point for meditators in the United States right around that time. It's you could say that's a coincidence. You could say it's just, it's not definitely causing it. It's not causative. It's just some simple coincidence. And maybe that's true. But I tend to look at the meditation as being kind of that hundredth monkey that we've been talking about during this conference. And I think Acronis Mago brought it up with the work of Rupert Sheldrake, and it's brilliant. So when you get to that point that enough people have really mastered something, or they understand what we're talking about right here, right now, what Nicole is talking about, and that happens because they're meditating, you're absolutely changing everything. And so that right there, to me, would be enough to really sort of move things. Now, I also know that, of course, Evan's the one asking the question, so he knows the work of the Ninth Wave and Dr. Kellerman that Regina Meredith, our keynote speaker, spoke of, and the indigenous wisdom. But the original thinking of the indigenous elders is that there is no such thing as a new idea. It's always been here. They don't look at linear time. So to them, of course, it's going to happen when it happens, and it was meant to be. So this meditation hitting the 10%, it's a chicken and egg problem, Evan. So I don't know what to say. Lots of possibilities here.
And I would say divine timing. What would you say, Nicole?
Yeah, I would say that the more that we that it perpetuates, there's a momentum building, and it may have started, but the momentum can build fairly quickly. Especially through conferences like this and stuff. The more that we make it commonplace to talk about these things, the more they become commonplace. And I was just thinking, to piggyback on the earlier question, when you were talking about we get what we focus on. So it's so imperative to focus on what we want rather than what we don't want. And there's a faith with that, right? For me, it's not a religious faith, but it's a faith nonetheless, to say my faith is that we live in a humane world and everyone's needs are being taken care of. And I find, so that balance of inner and outer, I find that if I go away and do something that is pleasing to me, I'll come back and the solution is there. So if I put on Twitter or Instagram, I'll see that the news reflects my vibration. It is at that level, as it should be, right? We attract we attract our vibrational offering. And so if I'm vibing high, I'm going to get news that matches that. And it's amazing. So, to extricate myself from the struggle, because the struggle is unnecessary, and just go and enjoy my life. And that's what I get. I get enjoyment of my life. And that's what comes to me. It's a miracle in and of itself. I'm so grateful for that. So I just have to feel good, right? Remind myself, okay, Nicole, stop doing that and just go feel good.
And I don't think, Nicole, you probably weren't tracking this Mandela effect through 2015 anyway.
I wasn't, no.
The person asking the question has been, not exactly since 2015, but shortly after. So that's Evan Maitreya, one of our speakers and presenters at this conference. And so he's coming from this perspective, like things are changing. And if you look at, you can look at Google Trends and notice, wow, there was this huge bump right around 2015. What's with that? And so it's kind of like a huge phenomenon happening globally. And that was where that question came from.
Yeah, I'm sorry I have not been tracking that explosion. I love it though.
Yeah. Yeah, we all love it.
I get to have, I'm sorry. I love that we get to have those conversations.
Right.
And experiences, actually. They're both fun.
Let's see, we can keep chatting. We don't have any more questions, or you guys can put them in the chat. We got about 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left. If you have any quick questions, type in there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this got a little bit, thanks everyone for sticking with us as that little bump happened. I was saying, I think it was when we got cut off, that this sort of thing happens to me all the time, but not for these reasons, but for just pure energy reasons. Does that happen to you too, Shane? Like occasional, I thought so.
It certainly does, it certainly does.
Wait, I'm asking you this question, and you told me what that crazy week you had, or I forget what failed. It was like everything.
Yeah. Mercury retrograde. It's something I've learned about since then. It's like every time stuff's going awry, it's Mercury retrograde. I'm like, okay, it's fitting. So
I've got something fitting for this conversation, because I've ordered a package from time to time, and you know how they give you the email updates. I've sometimes gotten 4 updates for one package with 4 different reports. One of them is good news, like the package is still on the way. The other 3 say it's been delivered. That's bad news because it's not here. So what I do is taking all of the advice Nicole is giving today. I just basically focus on, okay, well, it's not here, so obviously it's still coming. I'm choosing 25% of the choices just presented to me. I know it's impossible. I just got 4 status updates, but that's my life. So it's like they're playing with me. So I'll choose the one where it's on the way, and that's what I'm going to believe in. I'm just going to be relentlessly positive about this. And that's the only acceptable reality. And then that is the acceptable reality. Mm-hmm. But I'm aware that some people live in that superposition of states, and sometimes they ask the wrong question. Instead of how good can it get, they just say, what's next? Don't ask that. Just don't go there. So even if you believe in Mercury retrograde, you can still ask, how good can this Mercury retrograde get? Find out.
Moneybags is wanting to know if Nicole can just speak of her thoughts on the Mandela effect, just in general.
So for me, it's about really getting conscious about what outcome I want to have. And it's like Cynthia, just to kind of talk about what she was talking about. A few days ago, I was doing an internet search, and I wanted some information about something. And I saw 2 possibilities. I was seeing articles that it was this way, and I saw articles that it was this way. And I thought, how fun, I get to see the 2 preeminent possibilities, and which one do I want to choose, and which one do I want to experience? And so, Cynthia loves to ask, and I love this, how good can it get? So we have these moments, and they're choosing moments. And I often, if I feel that the outcome is a certain way and that's unacceptable to me, I simply choose differently, and the reality shifts for me. So I don't know if that's, like, for me, I just call it consciously creating reality, or consciously choosing. But that's what happens. So, or like, for example, something like cookies. I love cookies. And so like looking in the cupboard and looking all over and finally in exasperation, why it took me to that point, but saying, okay, where are the cookies? And then the cookies showing up right in front of me where I had just looked, like, poof, they're there. Like, where are my cookies? And there they are. So it's about really getting mindful about the type of reality that we want to experience. And it's fun too. Like, who
And
wants
what's even possible, right?
Yeah, who wants to be without a cookie?
Right.
We're getting a lot of chatter about Dark Wolf's onion rings recipe in the chat room. So. Funny.
Okay, somebody had a question. Imaginationary man, could we all be in our afterlives waiting for the entry back into life? Could this be the afterlife? Could we have just maybe not realized that we slipped off and we're, I guess, like a purgatory or something? I don't know. Either one of you, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good question.
We could save it for the panel if you'd like.
No, yeah, I love that. Absolutely. I would love to get feedback. When I ask, is that true?
Right.
I don't get a sense that that's true. But yeah, absolutely. Panel it. Let's see what other people have to say about that.
Yeah, it's not my personal experience either. I've spoken about it before, but this would be great for the panel. Let's bring it in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's panel it.
I heard somebody talking about my onion ring recipe, and those wolf ears, they pick up on stuff like that. We got that. We have the recipe hidden away in a secret lockbox under security in the back room, guys. You're not getting it. They've been asking my recipe for a while.
No,
it'll be the unobtainium special prize at some point.
If Cynthia can talk me out of it, you guys know how long I've been holding on to this thing. Guys, I want to thank Nicole DeMario for being here. I really appreciate this Q&A. What a great video. I really enjoyed that. That was very, very sweet. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I don't know another word to put. I mean, just such great information. So well stated. So thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you here. You're going to be here for the panel too, right?
I will be.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this. Shane and Cynthia, you have done such amazing jobs moderating today. Thank you guys so very much for doing this.
Our pleasure.
Our pleasure.
And we are going to take a quick, short 5-minute break, maybe 10-minute, 5 to 10-minute break. I look closer to 5 than I would 10, by the way. And we will be back in just a couple moments. And welcome back, everybody, to the Q&A of Nicole DeMario, or the end of the Q&A, the beginning of the panel, I should say, with Nicole DeMario. I've gotten so lost today, I don't even know where I'm at or when I'm at. I've time traveled, apparently, in my head. I don't know, guys. I'm so sorry about that. My apologies. Let's try that again. Welcome back, everybody, to the opening of the panel of the end of the third day of the International Mandela Effect Conference. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me just a moment. What a long day this has been. Fun, long but fun. I have had a blast, and I'm sure the rest of our panel has too, like Miss Nicole DeMario. Thank you for being here with us. And are you on mute, Miss Nicole? I'm not getting any audio through you.
No. Do you hear me now?
There we are. We got you now. We got you now. Maybe
Okay.
you back up from the mic just a little bit. I'm not sure, but we got you now. All right, Miss Eileen Colts, thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you guys for asking me.
Mr. Shane Robinson, been doing a great job on the moderation today. How are we doing today, Shane? Glad to have you here.
Thanks. Wonderful to be here.
And then Miss Cynthia Sue Larson joining us on the panel.
Yes, pleasure to be here. It's a
She's
great
also
day
been
for
an-
IM. Yeah.
It
For
is a
nonprofit
wonderful
today.
day.
Yeah.
Wonderful day for IMEC. We officially got our nonprofit status as of 5 minutes before camera. So I
Yeah.
could not believe how lucky we were with that. I
Wow,
am so
that's
happy.
awesome.
We are an official 501c3 by the or by the government standards now.
Fantastic.
And last but not least, Miss Lauren Cannell Pavelka. Thank you so much for being here with us also.
Of course. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
My pleasure. Shane, you said, yeah, before we went to break, you had a question you said you wanted to throw to the panel. So I'm going to go ahead and let you start this one off with this question, please, sir.
Okay, from Imaginationary Man, could we all be in our afterlives waiting for the entry back into life? Anybody want to take that one?
I saw Imaginationary Man's comment, and like many of us, he had an NDE. He had something happen. And yesterday, I think you were there during the panel, where a lot of us, not all of us, were explaining that, yes, an NDE did kind of kickstart, if not our Mandela effect awareness, but our consciousness expansion. Is it because it makes us think of life and death and life after death, or we touch our immortality a little bit when we go there, and then we come back and we bring that back with us, so everything looks different? I don't know. But for me, certainly my NDE was when I was 17, but I became Mandela affected around 1995, 20, 30 years later. But maybe the NDE gave me an awareness to be able to become Mandela affected at that point. I feel like everything's connected.
Yeah, and I feel like this actually ties in with what Lauren was saying in her presentation earlier about when you go through some trauma like that, you tend to pay more attention to stuff, right?
Yeah.
Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I apologize. I missed the question. I was taking care of something momentarily. Could you please repeat the question?
Sure. It is, could we all be in our afterlives waiting for the entry back into life?
I really haven't. I've heard this theory before. I don't buy it, only for the idea that, number one, babies are still being born. That kind of bothers me with this theory. Number two, unless they're being born into the afterlife, maybe that's a whole nother take. I mean, that argument can be made. Fair enough. Maybe we've been in the afterlife our whole, quote, lives. Maybe we'll take it that way. All right. But I've just always had a big problem with even putting that in a scope I can comprehend, I guess you'd say. I really can't make sense of that in my head.
What about reality jumping every time you die? So you go, like Suso's book. He had a lot of near misses, and he's like, whoa, survived that one. Whoops, survived that one too. What do you think of that, Jerry? Reality jumping every time you do die, but you don't know it.
You think you
because you're-
survived.
Yeah, you think you
Quantum
survived.
immortality is what it's actually referenced as. It's quantum immortality.
Mm.
That when one body ends, you will be quantumly matched up with the next closest version of your quote life or lifeline. That one, I've not died, so I really can't say yes or no on that. From what I've seen of NDE and OBE experiences, and Cynthia and I got into a bit of a discussion about this just the other day here in one of these panels or discussion groups. It very well could be another reality. The things they describe seems to be the same physical reality they came from, but what is to determine, that is and we learned that with Mandela effect. What is to determine we're in the same physical reality? As much as I have rallied against the idea of shifting timelines, everybody knows that's not my favorite theory per se, but the idea that we could be, it's science says, okay.
Well, I do remember being in that kind of waiting period, and I loved it. It feels to me, well, from my experience, it was just like the best retreat, the best spa ever. It felt like being surrounded by so much love, and I did not want to be here in this lifetime. That's my experience. So I remember that in between stuff. I remember what it is to be waiting in the entry the backstage before life. Love it.
Right.
Love it, love it, love it. It's like the buffet with all of Dark Wolf's onion rings, everything you want, it's there. No argument about anything. But that's why I would say this is not that. I think I came in with that memory so that I can raise the vibe. That's what the angels basically told me, because it seems unfair to remember that. It's hard to remember that and come into this,
Let me follow you up on that really quick, because I want to get to the whole panel, but let me just follow this up real quick. Do you think that's the reason the memory gets wiped?
Absolutely.
Of the glory
Absolutely. Because I was asking, why didn't you wipe my memory? And they said, you're meant to bring that up. You're supposed to remember it. The trouble is I'm sort of a, a flight risk, because I wanted to suicide at age 5. Once you know how good it is between lives, why would you be here? So that was the only small blip. That was the glitch, but I'm not going to suicide. I'm here. And
because I've made that argument myself about the memory wipe. Is it could be, if we did, why would we even hang around? Nobody would want to. Shane, go ahead. Or who hasn't answered the question? I'm sorry. Who's next up? Anybody want to take this? Lauren, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I don't at all know the answer to this question, but I would answer this question with another question and say, what if we don't die? And that's all.
What if we don't
What
die?
if we don't die? What if we don't? What if death is a lie? What if we do not die?
Are we talking physically or spiritually now?
I think consciousness goes on.
Yeah.
And that's an argument that I pretty much made exactly in my talk, is the consciousness or the spirit, or I would say they're one and the same. The conscious soul is what I would pretty much name that. And yes, I did just come up with that on the fly. But yeah, I would agree that it moves on to something else. What we know it to be, I don't know, but something. Anybody else?
I had an experience, and it was like walls and ceiling and floor, and I was in a space with 120, 40 some other people, and one moment I was in that experience, and the next moment everything was incandescent molecules of energy just vibrating, and it was ecstatic and blissful. And what that felt like to me, what I was being shown was, we perceive table and wall and chair and people, but what if it's just perception? So it felt so delicious. It was so good. And then the next, moment I was back to wall, chair, and I was like, no, like buying into the story of the physical, right? And the perception of all of this stuff is real. So yeah, that's my share.
Thank you so much. We had one from MR that was actually kind of touched on. Jerry kind of went there on the backs of the last one about being in the afterlife. This one, when we feel or think we died or of a sickness or an accident, and etc., or an NDE, have we shifted to a different timeline each time? Which is basically, if anybody else wants to chime in any further, that because that's exactly where Jerry went with it. That's very intuitive of you, Jerry. Psychic of you. Psychically went to the next question. So is there any
And
more?
what's funny is I just rolled up a second ago and seen, because I'd missed the question. I knew there was one in it. I rolled up to see what it was, and it was just that one. Oh, okay, well, maybe. And then you read it out.
Well, speaking of, you know what else is amazing here is I don't know if Nicole got a chance to watch Lauren's presentation. Did you get to see that today?
And I'm sorry.
Well, that makes this more amazing because you just talked about a chair, right? And I wrote down in my notes when Lauren was talking with her friend, who's a PhD student candidate, and it's Mariah was talking about a chair, and I took notes because this was so fascinating. She was describing that a chair could be seen from the viewpoint of social constructionism, that a chair can be seen differently by someone of a different culture, that they would not think it was something to sit in, but they might think it's something to stand on. And I'm just bringing this up because talk about coincidences. Of all things, you're talking about a chair might not even be there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so cool.
And there wasn't even in this experience, in the midst of it, there wasn't even a sense of physicality for me. It was just that beautiful sense of expansion and that which always is, like consciousness, beingness, isness. That's all there was in this incandescence, and just it was amazing. So. Yeah, it really, so that's another way, another tool to look at things like, is that really here? To drop into that sense of that which is beyond. That's another thing I use if there's an experience that doesn't necessarily feel good. It can be contemplative or just like that. What is that which is beyond? And instantly I'm in that space where there's no arms or legs or face or so.
That's cool. And Jerry, I've got, I don't know if you saw this, but Bill Knight asked a question that would be perfect for the panel. It was much earlier today. Should I go ahead and ask it, Jerry, or is that okay?
I would say go ahead. I think we've all kind of went through that last question, said everything we'd like to add to it. So yeah, let's go ahead with the next question here, please.
This is super cool. So for those that want back on the ME track, here we go. Do you think this timeline is the apex timeline, as many Mandela affected people seem to want to return to their old timeline, if it is a timeline?
I'll start on that one because I know a lot of the opinions here are very similar, but not all identical. I don't really see timelines necessarily in a holographic universe that's multidimensional. So I guess if the timeline represents a different dimension within the hologram, I guess that would be one way of looking at it. But I always feel like it's like a radio receiver. You can have a radio in one room, and depending on where you tune the dial, that determines what station you bring in. So I think consciousness is like a radio receiver, and depending on where you tune your consciousness depends on what dimension you're going to experience, obviously putting your focus there. I know from psychology that people who are extremely negative tend to draw negative people and experiences to them because that's where their focus is going. So I kind of don't feel like I'm jumping timelines with the Mandela effect. I feel like my consciousness is expanding to see more dimensions of the here now. Does that make sense? Instead of jumping somewhere?
Well, we could rephrase it for your mindset to, is this the best possible holographic possibility? There you go.
And then sometimes I meditate and walk and meditate, which is a waking meditation. requesting that I move into the best possible version of me in the here now.
So this
And-
question gets into the fact, like, some people think we're not in that best possible. So what, if you could talk to, is it, and how would you know if it is or not? And are we, and are they? What's
It's
going on?
interesting because I will notice personal Mandela effects, like the color of a building will change or a store will suddenly change around me. And then I'll go, oh, okay, I've shifted a little bit. And then I always expect that I shifted to a better version of me. I never expect to shift to a worse version of me. So I think my expectations are kind of my rudder in terms of steering my soul boat, if I can put it that way. But I can't prove it. I can't prove that I moved into a better version of me. I just know it's different.
Anybody else? Just, I'll turn this over to Jerry. I just wanted to make sure we got the question in there. So this question, I'll read it again. Do you think this timeline, and you can adjust that if you don't believe in timelines, just adjust it. So instead of timeline, use fill in the blank for whatever you think is happening. Do you think this whatever is the apex whatever, as many Mandela affected people seem to want to return to their old whatever reality? So answer that if the best you can.
So I've thought about this a lot, and though I say I'm against the multi-timeline theory, I'm against all theories because I'm the theory guy. I've got to stay unbiased. I can't say, yes, this is right or that's right, because I've not enough evidence to say either way. My personal opinion, I think the timeline jumping theory is a bit far-fetched, but science sends not to. So I'm game. Thinking along these lines, is this the best possible timeline?
Well, call
Now,
it
I'm sure
reality. Jerry, just think of it as reality.
Okay, fair enough, reality. I'm sure a lot of you looking around right now are saying, this is pretty wild, pretty crazy. I'm not quite sure this is the best. But I would point out, and I know a lot of you expected me to say, oh God, no, the craziness in 2020, this is nowhere near it. However, I would also point out that when the people left England to start a new country, they were looked at as rebels, as terrorists, as horrible, horrible people that were causing nothing but trouble. Yet, a couple hundred years later, we find ourselves in an amazing country who is once again going through some tribulation times. And I'm not talking biblical tribulations. Please, guys, don't twist my words and say Dark Wolf said the tribulation's happening. No, he did not. But there are some things going on in America that are troublesome, around the world that are troublesome. But we're only seeing things in a very narrow right now point of view. If we look forward to see what can come out of these things, how it could lead to greater things in the future, sometimes you have to ruffle a few feathers for a good thing to happen. I'm not saying it's right. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying what's happening in the world is right or wrong. But sometimes things got to get mixed up a little bit for something good to come to the top. So it very well could be our best timeline or our best potential. Or we could even say we meditate and ask for our best potential every day, regardless of what timeline you're on. We ask for our own best, highest potential.
Love it.
All right. Anybody else want to answer that one?
You could go for it, Shane. You want to take it on?
How good can it get? I feel like it's exactly as it should be. You know me. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Robert Wood, thanks for this question. Wants to talk about blood types changing in this place. 0 O negative to O positive, for instance. Anybody have any experience
I'd like
on
to
that?
say something about that because I know Bob, I know Robert, and we both have experiences of blood type changes. So I'm not sure about how exactly I changed, but I went from being a universal donor to being a universal receiver, which would have made me as a child an O negative, but made me as an adult an O positive. Unless it's a Mandela effect and the universal receiver and the universal donor swapped somehow.
I believe I heard they did. But
yeah, something strange is going on. And Bob and Eric and their family, they've got the same thing going on with only some of them changing from negative to positive. So anybody else here notice their blood type change? No?
I think it would require me knowing my blood type to begin with.
Yes.
So far, mine's been the same, so it hasn't changed yet. So no change, but that doesn't mean it won't. It's just so far.
Well, either the negative or the positive changed for me, or the determination of a universal donor versus a universal receiver flip-flopped on me. One of them changed because I used to be a universal donor and now I'm a universal receiver, which is very strange.
And Robert is saying correct. So he's
Him
experiencing
too,
it the same way.
and his family too.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a great question for everybody because it really kind of just gets to sort of your worldview. Jen Jones asks, why are we here?
Oh, Jen. Oh my God, the big question.
Well, we're
Why the
here
heck are we
today
here?
to discuss the Mandela effect and
And to
Why
have
are we
fun,
here?
have fun, have fun.
and to have fun. That's why we're here. No, seriously, guys, the question, why are we here in this earth now time? Why? What's the point?
For me, experience.
That's, yes.
For me to learn and grow and kind of stretch myself because I get challenged here. Definitely. This is a challenging place to be.
So I'm hearing video game, leveling up, experience. Is that is everybody seem to be? Lauren, you got anything to add to this? Been kind of quiet over there.
For me, I feel like the purpose of all of this is to awaken to your own greatness and vastness of who you are and oneness with God, with Source, with everything. And when you finally realize that connection, how profound that is, it's just overwhelming, but it's also such a delicious, amazing treat. And I think that that's the point, is for everybody to wake up to how amazing they are. That's my thoughts.
That's
love that.
lovely. Yeah.
I tell you what, our chat really listens to what we say. At some point, I didn't even realize I said in this earth instead of on this earth, and I was directly called out for it. So thank you, chat. And they are listening. Let me tell you guys, watch your words.
I
They
like
get you.
that though. In
But it
this
matches
earth.
the Lord's Prayer now, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a one big toroidal field, we could be going inside energetically, right? Without necessarily having to be in a hollow earth. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure of anything anymore. In terms of like science, everything's on the table for me now.
Well, even thinking of the firmament and the dome and all of that, that would be in it. It would be like a snow globe sort of scenario. And you could
Yep.
say in at that point too.
In?
But why are we in, on, over, around, or above this thing that we're around? In, over, or above?
Yeah, there's
To
something,
figure out the shape. I'm just kidding.
Oh, yes. I love
It
it.
just got really hot in here. All right.
may I share something?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I look at it this way, that we're here for the experience, whatever experience that we want to have. And if someone wants to have a purpose, then they can have a purpose. But for me, I distill it down to what is fundamentally true. That's always going to be my question. Without belief or perception or other things in the filter, I always want to know fundamentally what is true here. And of course, joy and happiness, that's one of the things that I've defined it, because I feel as if essentially that's who we are, that we are joy and we are bliss and this beautiful incandescence. But really, like purpose, it's just a choice to have purpose. It's not necessary that we choose into that. I mean, I look at human constructs and all the different narratives that people tell themselves. And again, for me, this touches on beliefs can determine experiences. And so that's a filter. right? And so I like to make it as simple as possible. And for me, that often is just really letting go of like what is perceived in that, just that sense of what is, that isness. And that really, I think the truth is in that space, that beingness, because it requires nothing of us. So, yeah.
Love that.
To be, to just to be.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
can we break down? And I love your question or your answer. What can we break down the facts? Because another question here coming in a couple minutes that really pertains to what is the question of life? Why are we here? If I hadn't had the experiences I've had in the last 5 years or so, I'd have told you it's just a random chance. We're here to do what we do. We work, we live our lives. We're here to raise a family and do the best we can. That would have been my answer. We're just here to survive and do the best we can. In the last 5 years, since I found the Mandela effect, since I found the Mandela effect, my answer has seriously changed because I've seen things, even in all my years of paranormal research, I've seen things personally in the last 5 years that have made me question free will, reality, why are we here, what we are here to begin with, not why, but even what, how are we here? There's so much stuff I brought into question and had to think about. Good things, mind you, but it really brings in a lot of contemplations. When you start talking about multiple timelines, just the concept of moving between skins or timelines or however it works, like even trying to make that work in a theory, it brings in a lot of different things that I would have never considered before. So why are we here? Man, we just added a whole new level to this question, didn't we? With these findings of quantum physics and ideas that we can be multiple heres, and here may change every 10 minutes or who knows when. The more I think about that, the more I'm going to ramble. So does anybody else like to take this microphone? Because I am really running out of words.
Well, I'm enjoying listening to that because sometimes Shane and I talk about reality being like Mario Brothers. Have you guys ever thought of that? Where you have unlimited lives, right? Every time Mario dies on you, boom, he pops right back. But he keeps popping back at the beginning until you figure that world out. And then when you finally figure out that whole world, you get to level up into a new world. But you know that there's at least 9 or 10 in front of you, and you're only on world 2. So it's like, does Mario explain to children the concept of reincarnation and learning at each level and each progressive, I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I love it. That's really deep.
It's not against, if you look at a lot of video games, it's the same concept, and that did start pretty much with the Mario games like that. So,
and also that question. What we were talking about the other day with, if you're not looking at it, does the moon disappear? In those games, you have to have a player actively involved in order to trigger the file that produces everything around in that world for that player. And when the players are gone, the computer gets to take a rest because of the law of, what is it when you conserve energy?
Conservation of energy.
There you
yes,
go.
ma'am.
Yeah. So,
so that is actually the video game theory for those that don't know. It's a form of simulation theory.
Right. And I actually like when I was talking to Cynthia yesterday, I think simulator theory is probably more in line with the pictures it conjures up, like you get in this thing, the fear of the death, it's real, but it's not a real threat at all. It's not a real danger, but it feels real.
Well, I mean, to a point, death is real to the point we don't get to come back to the physical body. I mean, it's over for that game.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
I mean, you can only do some things one time. I used to love that cartoon where Daffy swallows all that and blows up. So the problem with this trick is you can only do it once as he's floating.
Some people might beg to differ, like Suso.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to join Suso there, because when I give talks to the Institute of Noetic Science groups around here in the Bay Area, one of the biggest well-kept secrets is that I'll talk maybe to 50 people, 60, whatever. Afterwards, some 8 or 10 of them will show up because I'll have just talked about having, the experience that people will see, for example, an oncoming vehicle. There's no way to get away. And the next thing they know, they're on the other side of it. They've survived it. I just get flooded with people after that talk telling me that they need to get it off their chest. I'm the first person they've ever told this to, but that exact same thing happened to them. Like 8 or 10 people. That's a huge percentage.
Yeah,
and so this is one of the best kept secrets. It's not just Suso. And this is why there's traction for these ideas of, like, we all died in 2012. The guy that had that video on YouTube, he went to one of the conferences. Yeah. So
SMQAI.
SMQAI.
He had a series. We all
That's
died
the
in
one.
2012, and
right.
people were seriously, for a good reason. I don't even think that's been settled. Yes, maybe something happened to that version and dimension of Earth, and boom, everybody got moved to a new, slightly different dimension of Earth. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember CERN? That scientists said that CERN possibly could blow off a mini black hole. Do you remember that, Cynthia?
I remember that. But there have been so many things going on for so long. Humankind has been toying with stuff. They've been a danger to themselves and others for as long as humans have been around. Yeah.
When they decided to blow up that thing they did back in the 40s, the scientists told them that there's a 50-50 chance you will destroy the entire atmosphere of the Earth, and they went 50-50. Now let's do it.
Flipped a coin. Flipped a coin that day, right?
And that is kind of scary. Yes, it was Hawking who suggested that maybe a miniature black hole could escape. Luckily, this time Hawking was wrong, as we know.
Maybe.
Or we're in a black hole.
Listen, maybe he was right, and we
or
all
we're
shifted.
in a black hole.
Well, I want to go back to that question Bill Knight asks, because I didn't really answer it. So this is the one about, do you think we're in the best possible? It doesn't have to be timeline. Let's take a look at reality. I would say yes. And there's a philosopher I love who would back this up with philosophy. That's Nicholas Rescher. The book is Axiogenesis. He actually he starts with the question, why is there anything at all? Philosophers love to ponder such things. And he ends up very much going to this place, which sounds like how good can it get? Sounds like, what I love to talk about. It sounds like optimism, and it is. So it's the philosophy of this universe, this reality is so ridiculously unlikely that for whatever reason, it looks very clear that we absolutely are selecting for the best. How this happens, that's the subject of this whole conference and all these theories. And maybe we might not figure it out this week. But in any case, for sure, it looks to me, and I would say yes, I'm agreeing with Nicholas Rescher and Axiogenesis. Absolutely. This is the apex reality. And as crazy as it looks, I agree with Dark Wolf. This looks like a crazy year. A lot of people would agree. It's very traumatic, but maybe we need that trauma. Maybe we need it right now. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to think about that.
I agree. I think that everything we're going through right now could be the catalyst for something better. I know it doesn't look that way and feel that way collectively with the coronavirus and the masks and the riots and, but maybe this was what was needed to shake everything up so that we could improve. That's just what I think.
Lauren, yeah.
It brings stuff into question. Things like this really bring things to the forefront. Not this conference, to what's going on in the entire world. But this conference too. And like Cynthia said, we may not figure it out this week, but we're going to give it a darn good shot.
In answering that question, I didn't take a crack at it earlier, the first round, but I will defer to my Christian roots, and I still have this belief that all things work together for good. And also, one thing to keep in mind is, as far as my internet connection is unstable. That's not good. As far as can you guys still hear me?
You're freezing up a little bit.
Yes?
Yeah.
No? Okay. Okay. our realities are both individual and collective. So let me know if you guys can't hear me, okay? Yes, no. I'm frozen.
We're good. We're listening.
Okay. So our perception of reality and what we're experiencing with the Mandela effect, our life experience is individual and it's also collective. And I don't think there are firm timelines for each person or for each group. So is this the best timeline? Well, that depends on you individually. And for me right now, this actually is the best timeline, despite the riots, despite the coronavirus, despite a lot of difficult things. This is my best timeline, and I'm committing to a growth mindset. But for another person right now, they might be going through a lot of very difficult things, and it might not be their best timeline. But that's not to say it can't change or improve, because all things ultimately do work together for good, and that's my faith. That's my opinion.
All right. Next question.
Let's see if I had one more here. Okay, this is one from Alex. Why is most residual residue and Mandela effect residue in English instead of other languages? Anyone?
I don't know that that's even true. I've been tracking this phenomenon since the 90s. So I've been getting reports from around the world. It's amazing that they report it to me because I'm only English speaking, but nevertheless, I've been getting reports from Denmark, from Africa, from Asia, from Pacific Islands, you name it, and France, just everywhere. So for some reason, it seems like it's taking off in English right now, but this phenomenon is huge in Brazil, it's huge in Europe, it's huge everywhere, and it's growing. So maybe it started in English, but you're going to find it everywhere.
I also think that a lot of having lived overseas a lot in the Middle East, the West Indies, Europe, and America, that a lot of the movies that are watched and the music that's listened to is in English. So unfortunately in America, we're not watching as many Italian films and French films and German films. So we wouldn't notice the Mandela effects in them. And yet the English speaking Hollywood films are being watched in Germany and Brazil and Thailand, all over the place. So maybe people are noticing them more in those kinds of movies and songs. I don't know. That would be my guess.
They're having epic Mandela effects in other countries with their own language, TV shows, radio, everything. Celebrities dying that we don't know about in
that's great
in our English culture and American culture, but it's happening everywhere. And I do report on that in Reality Shifters, and I report it every single month for more than 20 years. This is a lot of data, so you can go month by month by month, and it'll show city, town, where it happened. So it's a huge body of data that's right there, and that's part of why I was doing that, because I figured at some point this will become important. Thank goodness.
Yeah,
now it
definitely.
is.
Well, I do know that there have been some Asians that have been in the chat during this event. I also happen to know that there is a person who has Peruvian family who has vouched for a couple Mandela effects in the Peruvian culture and the Spanish culture. I've also seen in the last year or so, especially, a large amount of Hindi videos on the topic. So it is getting more and more widespread across the country. Why is it mainly English? I don't know. Maybe we have a larger pop culture base and it just got noticed more here so in the beginning. I can only assume at this point. We did think it was just American based for a while in the beginning. You remember a lot of the theories asked, why is it just America? Why just English speaking countries?
I do want to clarify. He's talking about residue in English.
Residue.
Well, residue requires the effect to be in English, generally speaking, I would assume.
No, there's residue in other, there's a Danish TV show, and there's a scene where somebody was out on a balcony. It's very convoluted. It's long, but there's all kinds of residue. There's residue in Danish,
right?
And
I've seen reverse French, the certain effects, like wording effects, will be the same in French in a movie, but it won't be in America. But it'll be the way we remember it. You know, different little things like that. So I have seen why. Maybe it didn't get grabbed in the sweep. We got to answer why they happen to really have any further answers, I would say.
It's a good point.
Let's see.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to comment. I'm sure this has been discussed before in other forums, but I wanted to comment that I don't know exactly what the connection is, but I think there's some sort of correlation between the Western world, English, and Christianity, and that might have something to do with why we're finding more residue in English, because many English speakers are also Christians. And I think this message, this experience of the Mandela effect is for everyone in the world. It does not discriminate against gender, race, class, religion. But I think there's an important message in all of this for Christians as well. And a lot of countries that have high density of experiences with the Mandela effect also happen to be English speaking and Christian, though it's happening around the world, because like you guys said, I also have a platform on Facebook, and I've got people from all over the world and all different religions noticing this phenomenon.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to answer that question before I move on to the next?
Everybody's like, no, 10-foot pole, 10-foot pole.
Well, it doesn't get any easier from here. Okay, this comes from Eric Mill. Great question, by the way. And in fact, this might be a contender here. Do you think if the Mandela effect stops and we all experience the same reality, the social group complex will have reached consensus? So I guess it's kind of coming from the law of one perspective, where at some point what we're trying to achieve is some sort of social memory complex where we're all communicating telepathically. There's no deception. We're all more in one accord, but keeping our individual, that's what I'm assuming here about the social memory or the social group complex. So does anyone want to tackle that one? Do you think there ever will? First, I guess they're assuming there will be a time when the Mandela effect stop and everybody's like, okay, great, we can all agree. I don't know that I ever see a time like that happening, really. So
that's not what we know to be true about quantum physics. So it would be a different physics that we'd be moving into at that point. I loved what
I like that. I never thought of that.
Oh my gosh,
physics.
yeah. Well, Nicole said, I think it was Nicole, right? You said something
Nicola,
cool earlier. Yeah, DeMario. She was saying that the quantum
Nicole.
physics of the science of the future is where you go with the quantum physics. So it's like it goes together. It's like the quantum evolves as we do, is what she said. I would agree with that. So right now we've got quantum physics that shows that there is no such thing as objective reality. We would need a new physics to get to where Eric Mill is talking about, to get to that that consensus. So far, I don't see that would be possible just with what we've got. That doesn't mean it's impossible, because I am a proponent of how good can it get and axiogenesis and all that good stuff. So we're obviously going
a few floors up, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
I love that question. From the perspective of like having followed Abraham, Esther Hicks, and the Law of One, Ra being a social complex entity, I'm like, what is a social complex entity? And I guess the easiest way to describe that would be the collective brain of a group, which could be humanity. Like if Carl Jung is correct and there really is collective consciousness, I think there is. Whether or not all of collective consciousness will agree on anything, let alone everything, so that it can say, right, boom, we've done it. We all agree. This is reality. This is how it works. This is where we came from. This is where we're going. It's a fascinating idea, that a species, you look at how bees operate and ants operate, and they don't have to communicate. They communicate instantly, like one brain. So I just love that question. I think you could write a really good sci-fi story out of it, or, like a Philip K. Dick short story out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I got two things. Number one, I want to make it very clear right now. I've said this on camera before. If not, I have now. I am not related to Abraham and Esther Hicks to the best of my knowledge. I get this quite a bit, and I've been meaning to address it for quite a while. Last 3 days, I've been meaning to say something. I keep forgetting, and you said it. Oh, I need to address this. Yes, for those who have been wondering, and I've been asked many times, I am not related to them to the best of my knowledge. I am a separate line of Hickses. Now, I could be wrong. I could go to the family reunion next year, and they could be standing there. Who knows? But I don't think the ME will ever end. And the reason I don't think it will end is if what I think is correct, which is a huge if, let's nail that one to the wall. But if what I'm thinking is correct, that it's smeared across time. We've seen this thing retroactively do things. We've seen it walk its way back with other things like technology, things like that. So if this is smeared all across time from our standpoint, then I don't think it's just in the past. I think it would be in the future too. Ergo, I don't think there will ever be a time when some type of Mandela effect does not occur. It may be on a large scale, maybe on a small scale. Maybe noticed, maybe not. But with them occurring, I would say I don't think there'll be a time when it does it. Now, would we ever reach consensus reality? We would have to in order for it not to occur. Those are two opposing thoughts. You cannot reach consensus reality with the Mandela effect because the Mandela effect creates a non-consensus.
Very good point. Anyone else want to tackle that one?
I'd like to share something. I know when I'm working with others, one of the things I do, and for me this is unified field, and some people may call it collective consciousness, but I let go of the concept that there's separation between another person and I. And so when I let go of the story of separation, then I'm able just to experience the space as everything is connected, as one, really, connection. You could say connection, but connection doesn't really feel like that's the best word for me. It just feels like it's one energy. And so for me, there's a letting go of perception of separation. And when I let go of the perception, I experience it as I desire, which is unified. So like, for example, if someone asked me to do like a healing or some such thing like that, and they're in Sweden or something, I let go of the concepts of time and space, and the energy is just there. It's just, yeah. So I think for me, it's about using my mind to let go of these acculturations, these things we have led to believe as true, unexamined. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Does anybody else want to chime in?
That just reminds me of the chair again. It reminds me of entanglement, and one of my favorite physicists talks about how if you see, I keep bringing up the chair because I can't believe it came up twice in Lauren's talk and then also what Nicole was saying. But this physicist said if you see half of a chair and it's obscured behind something like the wall or the corner or a door or something, we assume that the rest of the chair is there. And we make that assumption instead of assuming it's smeared over all possibility in a wave function of all energy. And that would be because of entanglement. So it's what Nicole is talking about really gets into the heart of really experiencing each other in the energy state and knowing that when you come back into reality, it's going to be okay. So I love that. I'm just riffing on that.
Awesome. Let's see. Wasted Millennium asked the question, why does Have You Noticed Originals change when bootlegs doesn't? Not sure I understand this one. Even branches of a certain thing does not
I understand
change when
this.
Okay.
I understand this question. Let me go ahead and rephrase this in a lot better form. No offense to the questioner. I get what you're trying to ask. And sometimes even I'm sitting there trying to ask a question, go, how in the world am I going to word this to make it make sense?
Yeah, we've all been there. That's for sure.
So, yeah, no offense to you. We appreciate the question very much. The question is, when there's a Mandela effect change, the main place we find residue is in parodies or bootlegs, knockoff versions of something, is where we find a lot of our residue. Why would that be the case?
I would just go back to what I said about human consciousness. I think whenever you insert human consciousness into the equation, residue is created. So when somebody goes to create a who's the exercising guy, Richard Simmons outfit,
Yeah.
they think in their mind, oh, that's the dude with the headband, and they go and they create this outfit from their memory, and it's residue. They take a picture, and then we find it on the internet. We're like, look, we're not the only ones that remember Richard Simmons with a headband or whatever it is. Tattoos is a good one. Anytime there's like artistic influence, intuitive consciousness, it seems to create residue.
It's when we work from memory, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Mhm.
When I first heard that question, I was thinking like original and bootleg of music, which
That's what I was wondering.
And that would not make sense, because then, like, if it's a recording and it's a copy of that recording, it would probably still be the same. Usually all those
Exactly.
things change together.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting distinction.
That's what would confuse me. I'm glad you clarified that. Because typically they'll take the real thing and just copy it off and burn it off. So it would change with it, because it is.
Right.
I've had this question come up to me quite a bit too. And I think it's intriguing because we do find a lot in parody. That's what gets me, is the parody side of it. I love comedy. I love parody stuff. So it is finding a lot of the residue in there. And what it is, I think, is it just gets missed. Whatever the reality is cleaning up misses these little things, like in a parody. They wouldn't look to it. Assume, okay, now you guys in the chat, I'm not talking about an AI running reality. Let's be clear here. I'm talking about reality itself being an entity in and of itself. And okay, these are crazy theories. Bear with me. I know what I'm trying to say. Basically, there's a cleanup job that's done when there's a change. It's hard to find the evidence of what we remember, especially during a flip-flop. That's the best cleanup job the ME does. But somehow it misses certain things. It misses parodies. It misses jokes. It misses things with our consciousness in it. And I'm wondering if the consciousness, and I've thought about this before, like with your Denmark map, Shane, I'm wondering if the consciousness itself doesn't really play a large role. A lot of the evidence we find is hand-drawn stuff or handwritten or hand-colored stuff. So you could very well be onto something with the idea that consciousness itself. Now, the argument can be made consciousness went into the original creation of the first product. So,
I agree. I've noticed that too, Jerry, that do you remember that picture, Shane, you've shown it many times, of like a girls' football team, meaning soccer, posing in front of the thinker statue, and they're all like this, but behind them, the thinker statue has changed to this. So my theory is I keep bumping into things like that. It looks like the Mandela effect cannot interfere with the sovereignty of the human being. So it couldn't change all those people's poses from that day, but it could change the statue. And the statue is not a sovereign living consciousness, like you said, Jerry. It has something to do with consciousness. And when it is an extension of your consciousness, as in a photo of you, it seems to have a hard time changing that. Do you guys find that too? That it's more like the artwork changes, the song changes, which is just the recording. It's not the person, right?
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. That anybody else?
That photograph is great. You guys have all seen it, right? Have you seen it?
Which one?
The one with like 12 young women posing in front of the thinker statue.
Oh,
but they're doing
yes!
they're doing this pose, all of them still today, while the thinker's doing this.
And to the best of my knowledge, that was never a pop culture or social joke at any time.
We talked
in front of the thinker instead of.
Shane did cover that earlier today, and he talked about how there's like now we've gone into the knuckle biting phase.
That's hilarious.
And the question has come up: how would that cover? And I was thinking this myself. So the fact it came up in chat, I'm going to go ahead and say it. How would this cover body changes? Because that's consciousness.
So how would what cover the body changes?
So if residue is the consciousness. The reason it sticks around is the consciousness. Why do we find our body changes? Our consciousness is literally within our body per se, if you will, or connected to our body.
How, you're trying to connect it. I don't understand with the residue thing. Maybe.
Okay, so the idea here, Cynthia, is the only residue that would stick around would be something that the conscious energy has been put in. Like the people down like this, when the thinker statue's sitting like that, their conscious energy was there. We find it in comedies, we find it in parodies, we find it in drawings, in conscious creations.
Sure.
So with that understanding, then why the human body? How is the human body affected? It should not be because it is our conscious creation. We're all affected the same. We all have the kidneys in the wrong place. We all have the heart in the wrong place.
Well,
So
you could,
if
but those are improvements. I mean, that's what's interesting about the body changes. Largely speaking, they're upgrades, literally. So it's kind of different than these other things that you're talking about with the residue, because it's not so much that it's kind of like total straight out. How good can it get? It's complete axiogenesis. It's the universe showing its hand. I love that 7-minute video where someone says, "This is God showing off," you know. It's like totally showing off.
I seen that. Yeah, it's in the montage. I liked that. Yeah.
So, okay, whatever. The universe is showing off. Reality is showing off. There's something amazing going on here, and it's not just a matter of people. Because I remember with the heart being moved, I remember where it used to be. I remember it was kind of awkward for doing blood pressure with the nurse. You had to be you always had to have your left arm have the blood pressure. Now it doesn't matter. Now it's easy because your heart's in the center. That's different. Because these are upgrades. So I don't know how it ties into the residue. I just say maybe it doesn't need to tie into residue, but clearly this is what consciousness would prefer, would be these upgrades. Should we improve all of humanity? Everyone's like, yes, let's do it. Anybody opposed? Like nobody's opposed. Okay, let's do it.
I'd also like to remind everyone, when I told the story about the heart moving for me, I had the rib that kind of caved in over my heart that I was worried about, and my skin it reflected that I wasn't symmetrical there. And when my rib cage became symmetrical, my skin creases still showed. It became residue of my rib being crooked, which it no longer was. So I did have residue within my skin on my body. So.
That's cool. That is super cool. And I saw a commercial, it was a good 6 months ago, that had the heart in both places. It was a heart medicine commercial. And it started out at the beginning with the heart pumping under his shirt towards the left. And halfway through the commercial, it moved the heart to the center. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes, sometimes even the reality around us isn't sure yet. But now, like Cynthia, you were saying, once it's fixed, it's fixed. And those commercials can go away because it's made a decision, right?
Well, we had an artistic person do the VW commercial recently where he animated it and he drew what he thought was the current logo, which it wasn't, of course. It was the one without the brake,
What's interesting about the residue for the physical changes, unless you're like Shane and you've got I think that's so cool. You can just look at your body like, hey, look, it's better. It's fixed.
Yeah. And the map too. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. A lot of us don't have that kind of evidence to look to and refer and really get confident that this is actually happening. All we've got is our memory. And that can be disorienting and frustrating for most people. So
I think I needed the Aleph branch. I'm just too left brain, to be honest with you. It was just purposefully done that way to help me through my issues,
That's cool.
Because there's no other reason to have skin folds like that. It makes no sense.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We got about 5 minutes left. I got one more question I would like to throw in here. I like this question because we talk about this in the backstage sometimes. It is one of those really kind of controversial topic points. So, Orphan Red asks, is it harmful to those seeking truth about ME to repeat in speculation about timelines and quantum shifts? Should we have more research evidence-based theories, not present theories as truth? And I personally try not to present theories as truth, but a lot of people will go up to you and say, yeah, we're jumping timelines, and we'll stand on that. So do you think that's dangerous and we should have more research evidence-based stuff, or do you think it's good to speculate like we do, a little more open and out of the box? Anybody?
Well, I don't know if I'd use the word speculate, but maybe people think of philosophers as speculating, but I love philosophy because it really starts with the whole idea of what is actually reality, what is happening. And that's where all the best science begins, is with philosophy, starting with just amazing philosophers for thousands of years, not just in any one culture either. And the philosophy is just thinking. It's going after what Nicole's talking about, wisdom, seeking truth. And when you do that, then that's a fabulous way to begin. It's not time wasted. It's not wheels spun. It's actually asking good questions, which I like to emphasize is what I feel our organization is about. International Mandela Effect Conference. It's really about asking these good questions, whatever your questions might be. See where they take you. So I would advocate in favor of asking good questions, the ones that make sense to you, that feel right, that bring you joy. You know, this is like Marie Kondo with clearing your space. It's like clear your mental space. Focus on the questions that bring you joy. Go to the places that make sense for you. And let's create our own reality in the best way possible. And I know Moneybags would agree with that too. He's here in spirit with us. Like, let's create our best reality.
Yeah, and I do agree. I think we should consider everything, be open-minded to everything. And what you were saying, I think it could be dangerous if you present something as truth when you are just speculating. I think I always try to say I'm speculating, or that this is my experience. Yours might be different because, like we were just talking, we can have completely different experiences with this whole thing. So it's really better if we just keep love primary and the differences as a subjective difference, that, you know, everyone's just on their own journey and it's okay wherever they're at, you know.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I don't really consider anything true yet. I know that's hard to defend. So everything I hear from people to me is a theory. So I don't like hold always, unless I experience it myself. And then once I've experienced it myself, I can kind of sort out what's true for me. But I'm trying not to judge other people who have different versions of what's working for them. When they explain the Mandela effect and the whys and the hows, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay open because that works for them. But I don't know. It's like every single scientific fact starts with a question. It's that hypothesis of how, why, where, who, when. You know, it's that great question that eventually leads to a scientific fact that is eventually overthrown by a new scientific fact, if you think about it. It's like science is evolving, like Nicole, like you said in your talk, you know, science keeps evolving too. So I just try not to hold on to things as black and white. This is true and this is false. I'm like, maybe the truth is somewhere in between those two, you know?
I would like to hear what Miss Nicole, our resident quantum theorist physicist of the hour, second to Cynthia Sue Larson, of course. I would love to know what her thoughts on this are.
Okay, so let me have you specifically reframe that for me. So,
okay. Is it harmful to those seeking truth about Mandela effect to wrap it in speculation about timelines and quantum shifts and all the fun stuff we talk about? Or should we have more researched, evidence-based science, hard science-based theories, and not present theories also as truth?
yeah, I would absolutely agree with Eileen. I would say we have to be careful and very mindful of the narratives because our beliefs can drive our experiences. So I think it's always wise, like Eileen mentioned, to anytime we hear something to say, is that true? And is that true in my experience? And the additional question I like to drop in for myself is what is the fundamental truth here? And for me, that languaging indicates, like, am I getting a truth based on what I want to hear, or what I'm like really attached to hearing, or like I want the truth outside of all of those, the perception and the beliefs and the acculturations I want the fundamental truth. And for me, fundamental truth is that which is unchanging. So, yeah, and so evidence-based, when we look at science, and I'm not disregarding the importance of science, but I also understand that our beliefs are not separate from our experiments. And I did talk about that. And there's actually no way really, it's one of those things. There was a book, I think I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, Masaru Emoto, and he wrote about water and molecules and our relationship with these molecules. And I actually wrote him at the time, and he used words like devil and things like that, and he would paste that on the jar of water. And I thought, but how can you separate yourself from your experience of that word when you put that word on the bottle? So, and then I thought, well, where could you go on this planet where no one has an experience of that word devil? And then I looked at unified field perspective. If unified is in fact true, then the collective consciousness is driving what's happening with those molecules in that word on that jar. So, I mean, for me, there's a lot of different questions here. I don't know if that really is helpful, but I think always to ask questions and say, what is true? And is that true for me? Do I want that to be true for me? So does that help? Did I answer
No,
that?
it helps a lot, actually.
Okay.
I think that's a really good answer.
Thank you.
Personally, I try, and I present a lot of theories and hypotheses and ideas. And I do try to make sure that I mention, hey, by the way, this is a theory, this is a hypothesis, this is a thought, this is an opinion. I do think it is important when people explain these things that they do say, I think, or it's my opinion, or it's our finding, or our research suggests, or, really make it clear that it's your thoughts. And this goes for anybody, not just a panel, anyone that's talking about Mandela effect. If you walk up and start telling somebody, you're switching realities, this is what's happening. That's kind of a bold statement. Let's think about what we're doing there, because we don't have evidence to say this is. We can say we believe this is, but that's one reason I can't say I like or dislike any particular theory, is I can't show you the evidence that says, yes, this is, or no, this is not. So I think evidence is important. I think research is important. I think it's also important to be philosophical and ask the questions. Think outside of the box. Ask the questions that normally wouldn't get asked. Yeah, you might get some far-fetched ideas, but a lot of people thought that Copernicus and Einstein and a lot of the people that we worship, or I say we, that science worships today, or is the scientific greats, were considered nut jobs in their time. They were looked at as wrong, weird, and wacky in their time. Tesla even was considered an oddball in his time. Yet here we all find ourselves talking about his work more so than any other. So, just remember, we can ask the questions. We can think outside the box. Let's just be careful what we call fact and what we call theory. I think that's what this really comes down to. Let's be careful what we call truth and what we call opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect.
So-
I did want to mention before we call it a night.
Yes, sir.
is,
Yes, sir.
Lauren's website is up.
Right.
The survey's ready to go. So we want to invite everybody to go over there and take the Mandela Effect survey. Help us collect some data.
And
for
that's real
research.
science. Real science.
Real science, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Perfect segue. We got a little boy here.
okay,
Hi.
tell everybody.
Hi.
Say hi. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Callum.
Hi.
How you doing, buddy?
Mariah is trying to help my mom, and she's trying to help you guys. So we just
And you are Mommy is very good friends with Mariah.
Yes.
And you are very good friends with Mariah's little boys, right?
yes.
And so everybody can feel safe to trust. And you just want to help your mommy too, right?
Yes.
You want to help your mommy, help Mariah, help everybody, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So check out the survey, you guys. It's up live at mandelaeffect.world.
Yay!
You did a good
You
job.
cool little buddy.
Thank you, Callum.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Say
Yeah.
bye.
Thank you, Callum.
Bye,
Bye.
sweetie.
Bye, buddy.
That link is in the
Nicole?
Thank you
chat,
guys
you
for
guys.
letting him talk.
Oh, he's so cute.
Thank you.
Nicole, I was just noticing a lot of people want to know how to get a hold of you or how to hear from you. You don't have a YouTube or Facebook or anything?
I don't. I have a Twitter and I have an Instagram, and I can send you that information if you want after this call, and you can put that
Would you
up.
like the community to be able to get a hold of you? Would you like to give that out? Are you a little more personal about that? Or?
Yeah. How would you like me to give that to them?
Right here, right now.
Your Instagram, maybe?
Okay, so my Twitter is, and I just want to warn you, I did I was a political science. I ended up switching majors. So I started with epidemiology and exercise phys, and I switched into political science, environmental pre-law. So my Twitter, it does tend to be more like political in nature. So, but it is capital N in Nicole and capital D is in Demario. And that is my Twitter. I don't happen to know my Instagram offhand, but I'm happy to give that to you and you post that on the site. Does that work?
That will work. That will definitely work. So you guys, you heard it here. She will give it to us to post on the site, the IMEC.world.
And Jerry, somebody was asking what the name of Nicole's book is and where they can get it. Is that on
Do you have a
Amazon?
book, Miss Nicole?
I do. It's
You
entitled.
do? What is your book about?
It is about channeled wisdom. And
Channeled wisdom.
so it's a quote book. It's entitled The Book of Nicole. And yes, it is in fact available on Amazon. Thank you. And I can share that link also to make it easily accessible for anyone who might have that interest.
Absolutely. I always like a good book of thoughts and quotes. I've actually know a friend who collects those. No joke. I know a friend who literally collects books of quotes. So that is awesome. Guys, you heard it here first. You will have her information on the site just as soon as we can get it to Fitz to get up on the site. Thank you so much to Nicole DeMario. Thank you for being here. It's such a wonderful Q&A and video and panel discussion tonight. Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Lauren Cannell Pavelka, another amazing video and discussion today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jerry.
And it's always a pleasure to see little Callum there. That's always nice. Shane, always a pleasure, sir. Great moderation today. We appreciate everything you do for the organization. Thank you so much, sir.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Jerry.
As well as Miss Cynthia Sue Larson, who does an incredible amount of work also for this organization. Thank you also for moderating pretty much every day now, right? You are muted, Miss Cynthia.
That's so funny. I was trying to be polite and then I forget what's going on. Yeah. Well, I just said it comes with the territory. And you're doing every day too, Jerry. So thank you for all of your great service. It is an honor, I feel. I'm sure you feel the same way.
It's both an honor and a pleasure to even be a part of this, let alone to be asked to MC again. That is just amazing. So thank you guys for the honor and ability to do such. Ladies and gentlemen, the third panel of the 2020 International Mandela Effect Conference. There you are. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and close out here. We thank you so very.
We're going to pick the two questions.
I'm getting there. As Cynthia said, we do have to go behind the scenes and do some deliberation. We're going to close out the panel here. Let me reword this. You guys catching on my words tonight. You guys are really getting me on my words tonight. I love it. Keep me in line. Absolutely. Got to keep them in line sometimes. Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, we will be closing this panel out for now. The show's not over yet. Don't go nowhere, guys. We got books to give away. We got all kind of goodies coming up. So, again, we're going to close this panel out. We thank you guys so much for being here and enjoying this with us. We thank the panel so much for being here. And we will be taking a short break I'm not even going to pretend I know how it's going to take. There's some great questions today. So we got a short break to discuss how many or who's going to get these books and what questions wins, and we will be right back.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
And welcome back, everybody, to the final segment of today's broadcast. We have our winners. Guys, we have our winners for today. I hope you guys are excited. I know I am. Today's winners. Guys, let me tell you, these questions you guys have been bringing in, this is what I love to see. This is one amazing thing about this meeting and this conference. You guys come up with so many brilliant questions. Don't let anybody say the Mandela effect community are unsmart people. You guys have given questions that even made me scratch my head, and I like to think I'm a pretty smart dude. So the winners for today's question giveaway, and we will be giving away a copy of Reality Shifts When Consciousness Changes the Physical World. Cynthia Sue Larson. The winners are Imaginationary Man, who also called me out on my In Earth, by the way. He was really listening in there. Totally had a lot of great questions the last couple days. He finally wanted his question about the unaffected being the mentally ill and us being the non-mentally ill, which I got to say, I like the viewpoint. So congratulations. You have won a copy of Cynthia's book, Imaginationary Man. Way to go. Also, Morris, you have won a copy of Cynthia Sue Larson's Reality Shifts book. Your question about, or your two-part question, as a matter of fact, about deja vu. So we thank you, sir, and appreciate the questions. And we appreciate everybody's questions today. A lot of amazing, amazing questions came in. Like, how many licks does it take to get to the center side of a Dark Wolf onion ring by Dark Slayer over here? Not the most advanced question of the day, but there were a whole lot more that came in. There were a lot more top level. Seriously, guys, you guys have really put a lot of thought into these, and I can tell. It is absolutely amazing what you guys have come up with. You've stumped us more than once. I think you're out there playing the game Stump the Panel, and I think a couple of you are like texting back and forth. How are we going to do this? Because you guys are good. You're good. You're good. You know who else is good? The people who have put together this entire program for you guys. 3 days we are in now, the end of the third day. We went strong almost 8 hours a day, every day, and we could not have done it without the incredible IMEC organization and its board members like the president, Cynthia Sue Larson, the vice president, Christopher Anatra, the treasurer, your very own Mr. Jerry the Dark Wolf Hicks. You've got Miss Lauren Cannell Pavelka, who sits on the board, as well as Mr. Shane Robinson, the one we like to call the heart of the IMEC organization. And then we've got the consultant, Miss Kimberly Lynn Henson. We've got the video production crew, Frontline Productions, does an amazing job for us, guys. As well as our webmaster, Fitz, who does the best job that I can say from a webmaster. Every request I've ever made of him, he's done it. Guys, we have some information coming up about tomorrow you're not going to want to miss. Stick around a couple more minutes. Promise, it's worth it. We got some cool stuff coming up tomorrow, guys. We got Ladies Night in IMEC. That's right. We're going to find out about that in just a moment. We got Ladies Night coming up in IMEC. Stick around for more details momentarily. But first, the reason we're able to do the Ladies Night in IMEC and the reason we're able to do all of this for you guys is thanks to our wonderful and amazing sponsors like the Conscious Life News, the Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network. So, you know, Rippin' Rabbit here in chat every day. It has been so awesome to have you hanging out with us. Absolutely amazing. I've also got my radio show tomorrow night, guys, after our session tomorrow over on Rippin' Common Sense Radio. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Thank you so much for the help you've given us this year as a sponsor. We appreciate you being a sponsor of IMEC. Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. We appreciate you so very much. As well as the Kingdom of Nye Radio Network. I just love growling that R on the radio, right? Sorry, guys. I got to have some fun every now and again. Super chats, guys. You guys have thrown the super chats out left, right, center, and then some. And we appreciate it so, so greatly. We've got Earth Daughter, We've got Feminem, Melinda Iverson in Propagate This Light, Dark Slayer 1, Victoria Macaris, Esteban Herdez, Eric Mill, Nicola Simpson, Otsuko Ushida, and apparently I am saying the name right. They confirmed it in chat for me, so thank you. I appreciate that, Otsuko Ushida. Jacqueline Klein, as well as Moneybags73 and Jerry the Dark Wolf Hicks. Thank you all of these folks for donating to our super chat and our organization. As we had just found out today, huge news that we are an official 501c3 organization. We have been a pending status until today. So we just found out 5 minutes before we came live today that we are an official 501c3 organization. Tomorrow, guys, tomorrow you do not want to go anywhere. You want to be glued to your seat the entire time. Why? Oh, let me tell you why, by goodness. We have a show tomorrow you're not going to want to miss. We have the ladies of IMEC. That's right. In the morning, we're going to hear from Miss Cynthia Sue Larson, I do believe. Let me check the schedule here, make sure I'm right. Yes, I'm right. We're going to hear from Miss Cynthia Sue Larson about the voyage of the Mandela effect. Then we're going to hear from Miss Jan Ingalls Smith about the universe that we inhabit. And then the evening session, guys, if you've ever seen The View, we're going to have our own very own IMEC version of The View with the ladies of IMEC. That's right. Tomorrow will be all the ladies of IMEC. I might pop my little wolf head in here every now and again and do a couple announcements and introductions. But tomorrow's the women of IMEC, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoy. So until tomorrow, and tomorrow morning nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the IMEC organization, our affiliates, our sponsors, and everybody involved, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. On behalf of the International Mandela Effect Conference, we thank you for being here, and we look forward to picking up once again tomorrow. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all she wrote. See you tomorrow.